Foreclosures are coming back on the markets. Here's what you need to know to be ready for them. Okay, foreclosures. Now, most people know what they are, but just in case, a foreclosure is where somebody buys a house, they can't make the mortgage payment anymore, so the bank takes the house back and resells it to a new buyer. There are a lot of myths that swirl around about foreclosures. That's something that I want to talk about today. I've been in real estate for over a decade and I've done a lot of foreclosure transactions, but you haven't really seen any over the past 3 years because of COVID guidelines. The government said that because of COVID and people losing jobs and all that kind of stuff, banks were not permitted to foreclose on a house, meaning that they can't take the house back and kick the people out. That is now changing. The law that said that expired about the middle of last year, although most of the banks said that they wouldn't start moving on this until January. So starting in January, they sent out the letters, they filed the lawsuits, and we are going to see a lot of foreclosures come on the market in the next 6 to 12 months. So today we're going to talk about 3 of the most common misconceptions when it comes to foreclosures, having to do with price, having to do with loans, and having to do with condition. The number one misconception is that foreclosures are cheap. How this one normally comes up is when somebody has a pre-approval for a loan, but it's not quite enough to get them into the house that they want, size, location, whatever it is. So somebody says, well, you should just buy a foreclosure. However, that doesn't really work that way. So what a bank does after a foreclosure is they take possession of the house and they send an appraiser over there to do an appraisal on the property. That appraisal only takes into account the condition of the property, the location, bedroom counts, and everything, and compares it with similar comps, meaning that if the foreclosure isn't in bad shape, it is not automatically cheaper just because it's a foreclosure. As a matter of fact, a lot of the times it's actually priced a little bit higher than the market because the bank doesn't care. Like it's just sitting there. They'll have to pay property taxes eventually. But a lot of sellers, they're like, well, let's put it on the market and go for it and see if we can't get a little extra. There is no truth to the idea that banks only price foreclosed homes in the amount that they need to be paid back for their mortgage. They price them in exactly the same way any real estate agent would price a house. So if you're thinking that you're going to get a foreclosed house, which is awesome, but super cheap just because it's foreclosed, unfortunately it doesn't work that way. When you do see foreclosed homes that seem awfully cheap, and I've seen a ton of them with clients, what that means is that there's something wrong with the house, something significant enough that it takes tens of thousands of dollars off the price. I'm sure you've heard horror stories about how, when people are getting evicted from their houses, they, rip out the light fixtures and steal the flooring and the toilets and all those kinds of things. Banks generally don't make repairs before they put them on the market, and so the price that you get is going to be the price that it's worth. Whether it's still in really good shape, it's going to be priced at the regular market price, even though it's a foreclosure, or it's in really bad shape and it's going to be priced like it needs, flooding repair, or it needs new light fixtures, a new flooring, or a new toilet. So if you're shopping for a house and you see a foreclosure that seems like an awesome house and priced pretty well, absolutely look into it, but just be prepared for the fact that if it's priced tens of thousands of dollars under what the regular market price would be, that probably means there's tens of thousands of dollars worth of work needing to be done. Okay, number 2, it's all about loans, which are, kind of dull, but it would be pretty easy to explain why you may not be able to use your loan to purchase a foreclosed house. Now, obviously, every buyer is looking for a bargain. You'd be silly not to. But a lot of times, people that are looking at foreclosed houses, it's because, like I said, they don't have $1 million to spend on a home, and they want to get the best possible house for their dollar. So they're looking into foreclosures, thinking that, even if it's cheaper and it needs some work, I should still be able to buy it. This can get complicated if you're a buyer who has an FHA, a VA, or a USDA loan. Talk to your lender or check your pre-approval letter to see what kind of loan you are being offered. If it's a conventional loan, great, you should be fine. Some foreclosures don't actually even qualify for conventional loans, but those are usually cash only, and your agent will be able to tell you about those. If your loan type is an FHA loan, a VA loan, or USDA loan, you may have a much harder time buying a foreclosed property because often banks aren't willing to consider financing that includes those loan types. Here's why. FHA stands for Federal Housing Administration, USDA stands for United States Department of Agriculture, and VA stands for Veterans Administration. All of those loans are government-backed loans, and they're really, really great loan programs because they allow people to buy a house with 3.5% to 0% down depending on the loan program that you're using. So here's where the tricky part comes in. These government-backed loans have a safety and structural checklist that needs to be passed before the lender is able to write the loan through these government programs. Most of the time, the bank will not accept these loan programs because if there is a problem that they check off on that checklist, they're not going to be able to write the loan because they're not willing to do repairs. Obviously, a house with a flooded basement or blown pipes or something like that isn't going to pass this checklist that the government uses. But, the houses that are in good shape, that they've had the appraisal and they're priced at market value, you would think would go FHA, VA, or USDA. Unfortunately, again, that is not the case. These government-backed loan programs, that safety and structural checklist, actually serves a good purpose, and it's for the protection of a home buyer. So, they are looking for things like holes in the roof, and they're looking for cracked foundations, and they're looking for working fixtures in the bathroom. So things that really protect buyers. But the list also has things on it that, in theory protect buyers, but maybe kind of, like ticky-tacky little stuff. So if you have some peeling paint on the exterior of a window frame, that won't go FHA, USDA, or VA, because the worry is that paint can be peeled off and eaten, and what if it's lead-based paint? There's other things like, every step that has more than 2 steps on it has to have a handrail. There's certain cracks in the sidewalk with trip hazards. There's all kinds of little things that normally wouldn't be a big deal. You just fix it later. It's not the end of the world. But because these government-backed loans have that checklist, they have to be remedied before you can close on the property. For a non-foreclosed house, no big deal. Seller paints the window frame. They put in a handrail. Sometimes they let the buyer show up and paint the window frame. Nobody really cares about these things because they just want to get the deal done. But the banks won't do any repairs. So you will most often find that banks will not accept FHA, VA, or USDA lending. The big number 3, the condition of the property. So we've talked a little bit about this when we were talking both about the pricing and then about the loan stuff. But as I said, banks do not make repairs. Occasionally, a certain kind of bank, maybe, the original loan is a certain kind of loan program, or they have, a state law or something like that. They will do what they call a property condition report, where they send somebody in there, not a home inspector, but somebody goes in there and they kind of note down and perhaps even fix some things in the house. If there's an obvious, PVC pipe that's busted out, if there's some kind of, flood damage that needs to be mitigated, they will go in. They will strip out the moldy drywall. They will, clean up debris, but they don't replace the drywall. They don't replace the studs. They make it safe and sellable, but they don't do any fixing up. Some foreclosures allow you to do a home inspection like you would with anything else. They're still not going to fix anything, but if you get that home inspection and there's some horrible major defect, you should be able to back out and get your earnest money back. Obviously, check with your real estate agent, check all the contracts, make sure you know the answer to that question before you put an offer in on a house. Can you have a home inspection? And if it uncovers a major defect, can you back out and get your earnest money back? Some foreclosure properties don't let you do any kind of inspections at all. That's relatively rare, but depending on, what the banks do with this new market and all the issues that have come up over the past 5 years, we may see more banks offering no inspections on their property because they know that the buyers out there are getting desperate for anything affordable. One of the things you need to do is absolutely ask about the state of the plumbing, and if you can, get a pressure test on the pipes. As I said, a lot of these houses ended up being vacant through the winter. Nobody turned off the water, nobody blew out the pipes. So in the winter, when nobody was there, some water froze and the pipe broke, and now there's little pinholes everywhere in your plumbing. This is obviously not ideal, but there is a test you can do where someone will come in and actually blow air through the pipes and see if, there's little hints of air escaping through the pipes, which means that they're all broken. Another thing about property condition that you need to talk to your agent about ahead of time is if the house has been winterized. So the bank has come in, they shut off all the water, they blow out the pipes, they turn off the electricity, everything like that. If the house has been winterized, can you turn those systems back on for a home inspection? Sometimes the answer is no, in which case, no. Most of the time, though, the answer is yes, but be aware it is at your expense. What that means is that you're going to have your agent coordinate with the bank's representative. You're going to have to coordinate with the plumber. You're going to have to electrician, whoever it is, to get in there on a certain day, have the water turned back on, have the electrical turned back on through the utility companies, Have your guy check everything to make sure it's okay, and then in most cases the bank wants you to turn all of that back off. You will have to open up those accounts in your name in most cases, so it can be complicated and it also can be expensive. It's kind of a double-edged sword because, it's kind of expensive and a big pain in the ass, but the last thing you want to move into this house and find out that all the plumbing has pinholes in it, or that the electrical can't be turned back on because there's a fire hazard, or something that makes it, not just kind of an ugly house, but actually a dangerous house. Now, all of these things sound like bad news about foreclosures. It's not really bad news. I've had a ton of clients who have bought foreclosures. They're cute, they're willing to do a little bit of work, they don't have, blown pipes because we did all the proper inspections, and they ended up getting a really cute little house for not a lot of money, maybe saving, as much as $100,000 in a couple cases. The key to being successful with a foreclosure is to have a good agent. There's a few reasons for this. The first one is that foreclosures are very competitive, particularly in this market now where investors are desperate for houses to flip. They're going to be at the front door 5 minutes after it's listed. You have to be able to know about these houses as soon as they hit the market. The second reason you need a good agent is because you guys can sit down and figure out if foreclosure is even a good idea for you. Obviously there's condition considerations. Do you want a fixer-upper? And if so, how much fixer-uppering, can you do? Is it something that's going to work with your lender, with your loan type? Each house is individual, so, they may have different requirements. You have to have an agent who's on top of that thing. I'd love to hear if you guys have bought a foreclosure and what your experience was. Was it smooth sailing? Was it a little complicated? Was it a horrific nightmare? I'd love to hear from you, so please let me know. And it just so happens I've done a bunch of foreclosure stuff. So if you do have any questions about the process, whether you're looking at a specific foreclosed house or you're just like, foreclosures, I heard they could be cheap. What's the details? I have them all. So give me a call or text me anytime. 219-765-2062. If it's easier, you can always send me an email at hsbyerica@gmail.com. Throw your contact information in there and send it over to me, and I'd be happy to help. Buyers, sellers, curious onlookers, please check out my website at homesalesbyerica.com. There's a full buyer's guide in there. I talk about some of this foreclosure stuff. I also have a full seller's guide. You can do a home search. We can talk about a home valuation. There is also a chat link in there. So if you want to click on that and send me a question, I can get back to you right away. If you are thinking of buying or selling real estate pretty much anywhere in the country now or in the future, please subscribe to my channel and like this video. I do buyer and seller tips once a week. I do local market updates for the communities around me. And I have all kinds of little shorts in there, just little quick stuff that'll help you in your process. Thanks, guys, and I'll see you Tuesday.